I've decided to review the Phantom movies in chronological order, beginning with the one that started everything off, the 1925 Lon Chaney version. Back in the 1980s, when I was first becoming interested in the Phantom, I became obsessed in my search for the Chaney movie. At first, all I could find were tantalizing stills of Chaney's hideous makeup, so I could only imagine what it would look like moving. Remember, this is in the days before the internet. You couldn't just go on Amazon or eBay to buy old films. I tried to track down the movie in every video store I could find. On a number of occasions, requests had to be made to the National Archives, but there was nothing. The video was totally out of print in the UK, and even searches in the USA turned up blank. Ironically, the only place I found a copy eventually was at the Paris Opera House itself, but it was in a CCAM format which I was unable to play or convert. Again, Chaney's face stared at me from the box. What a tease. During my search, I tracked down other rare Chaney films, including He Who Gets Slapped, The Blackbird, and even this 8mm bootleg of a film called The Hypnotist, where Chaney plays some sort of weird vampire, but the quality is pretty shocking, as you can see. At the end of the 90s, Photoplay Productions released a restored version and aired it on UK television, so finally I was able to view this silent masterpiece. I see little point in reviewing it in as much depth as the other movies, and really, if you're any kind of Phantom fan, you'll have already seen this one by now, and if not, go and get it, it's easy enough to get hold of now. But with so many editions of the film available, which version should you get? I'll come on to that later. The Chaney film is widely considered to be the best adaptation of the LaRue novel. It's certainly the closest to the book. It has everything. It's got Carlotta, Box 5, Bouquet, The Managers, The Chandelier Fall, Caesar the Horse, the famous unmasking scene which is widely regarded as one of the greatest moments in the history of the horror movie. There's the masked ball, Apollo's lyre, the Persian, the torture chamber. It's got everything. However, accuracy to the book does not a great movie make. And although it has some pretty ropey direction in places from Rupert Julian, and some melodramatic, over-the-top acting, which makes it seem old-fashioned even for 1925, again more likely the director's fault than the actors, this film is a true classic for its creepy atmosphere, great use of shadows and set design, its impressive colour sequences, and, of course, Lon Chaney. It's Chaney's performance that single-handedly turns this into a classic, and showcases exactly why he's so highly regarded as an actor. His self-designed makeup is superb. It has never been equalled since in any other version. Born to deaf mutes, Chaney had a lifetime of expressing emotion through mime, and he can say so much with the simple movement of his hands. Special mention has to go to Chaney's incredible makeup job. Which other actor, besides Chaney, has the balls to put himself through such unspeakable agonies for his art, such as stretching his face around with wire, stuffing his cheeks and nose full of putty, and dilating his pupils with eye drops? That's why it sort of makes me mad when today's modern actors whinge and moan about having to wear makeup for any length of time, like Julian Sands when he took the part of the Phantom for Dario Argento's monstrous remake. He refused to have any Phantom makeup on. Well, if you don't want to wear makeup, then don't take the role of the Phantom. They should really take a leaf out of Lon Chaney's book. Now, he was hardcore. Although Mary Philpitt's Christine is a bit over the top, I think she's arguably the most beautiful actress to ever play the role, and she's the one that I think of when I think of Christine. Although widely considered among fans as the best film version of the story, it also gets a lot of flack for its unfaithful ending, where the filmmakers tag on a silly chase scene where Eric gets killed by the mob. But did you know it wasn't always this way? In fact, there were at least 3 distinct versions of the film before it came on general release. I like to call them the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, there was the good version. When it was first shown to preview audiences in Los Angeles, the movie was much more faithful to the novel. It featured more scenes direct from the book, such as where Christine prays by her father's grave in Perros, and the Phantom plays the violin. Ral confronts the Phantom, who pelts skulls at him. He also gets a look at his hideous face. Following a test screening, the scene was cut because it offended some religious audience members and because it was too horrible for the general public, and perhaps justifiably, because it spoiled the shock of the later unmasking. It's a shame that no footage of this still survives. Only these still images, but it does look great. The torture chamber sequences were much more elaborate, with lions and tigers and bears oh my being thrown into the mix. The ending had Eric redeemed by Christine's kiss, and he dies of a broken heart at the organ. I think if these 2 scenes had remained, then the LaRue fanboys wouldn't have much to whinge about at all, as you'd have a near-perfect adaptation of the book. But the test audiences didn't like it. You have to remember that, with the exception of some foreign films like Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu, There were not many horror films around. In fact, Phantom could probably be described as the first real American horror movie, so audiences were unprepared for its unrelenting horror. They demanded more comic relief. They wanted less scares, and most of all, they wanted justice. They didn't want the Phantom redeemed at the end. They thought this villain had to pay for his horrible crimes. And so they shot a lot of new material for the film, which I call the bad version. This version had a new ending, which is still in the final print today, where the Phantom is chased by the mob and beaten to death. They also added lots of comic relief with Chester Conklin, and a lot more emphasis on the Raoul and Christine relationship. Thankfully, these scenes don't exist today as anything other than stills, but they still look pretty stupid. Like, there's a scene where Raoul is insulted by Count Ruboff, no kidding, that's his name, and there's a ridiculous barroom brawl like in a western. Later they have a duel with pistols, and the Count wins, knocking over Raoul by shooting him in the belt. Good job he was such a good shot, or Raoul would have been the opera's new castrato. Raoul's brother Philippe has a more prominent role in this, and sends Raoul off to the French Foreign Legion for his own good. There's even a dumb scene in the prison where Chester Conklin rescues Raoul with a file hidden in a cake, which really is a cliché of a cliché. This version was shown to a San Francisco preview audience, and they hated it too, so it had to be re-edited again, with most of the new material being cut out again. So this leaves us with the ugly version. Ugly because it's a real mishmash of all different edits, with scenes and title cards from all over the place. And this still isn't the movie most people have seen today. Check out one of my other videos called The Real Unmasking on my YouTube account for more details, but basically, in 1929, they wanted to dub the original and release a talkie version, so rather than cut up the original negative, they just used secondary takes and different camera angles, and this is the only print that survives in any kind of decent quality. It's this one that's available on DVD today, but more on that next time. So, if you haven't seen the Chaney Phantom movie yet, you might be thinking, I'd like to check that out. I know, I'll watch it online. I'd urge you not to do that, as you'd be spoiling it for yourself. Because it's a silent film and has slipped into the public domain, there are a multitude of different editions available for sale and online. So, which should you watch? I'll address that issue in part 2.